Hi, and welcome to the first in a number of lessons on Construct 3 that we are putting on here at Colchester Institute. My name is Ben Wenham, and I am a hourly paid lecturer in games design. I do a lot of teaching of Construct in the Level 2 and Level 3 Year 1 of the course here. So today we're going to be working through some of the basics. So I'm going to show you, first of all, how you get into the actual engine that we're going to be using. So we can come here to construct.net, which is the homepage for Construct. We go to Try Now, and then down here you will see there's a button that says Launch Now. I'd like you to click that. This brings us into the editor, which is where we're going to be doing sort of the stuff that we're going to be producing. Yeah. So we're going to start by hitting New Project. Let's call this Platformer, or My First Platformer. There we go, that's a good name. And we're going to change its viewport size to 1920 by 1080. We want to have it be landscape. Yeah, that should be right. So we're going to create it, and this is now our workspace for doing stuff in Construct. So we can use the scroll wheel and control to zoom out and control what we can see. We can also zoom in. Down at the bottom we have slider bars that we can use. We can also use the scroll wheel to move up and down, and shift scroll wheel to move left and right. Okay, so now to talk us through the different bits of our screen. Over on the left hand side here we have the properties bar. This is where all of the information about the different objects in our game can be found. So what's an object? Well, an object is a container for data, and a good way for you to think about it is it's anything that will be in your game. On the right hand side we have the project bar and the layers bar. Now we're not going to worry about the layers bar right at this moment, but we are going to worry about the project bar. This is a file hierarchy that shows us where everything that's in our game can be found. So at the moment our game is mostly composed of an event sheet and a layout. This here in the middle of our workspace, this is our layout, and if we click this tab here, this is our event sheet. The layout is where all of the information that we can see in the game is shown, and it's how we design our visual interface, our graphical user interface, our GUI. This is the event sheet, and this is where we do the programming in a limited form that we use when we are making games in Construct. Okay, so at the moment it's a big old blank white space and it doesn't really do anything. So let's work through the process of getting it so that we can have a character that can stand on a piece of ground and can move around. So first things first, let's make a character. So we're going to right click on the workspace, and that'll bring up this tab here. Words failed me. Let's call it a tab. It brings up menu. There we go. That's the word. and we're going to insert an object, and we're going to scroll down until we find sprite. Now if we're ever unsure where something is in this menu, we are going to go to the search bar and we're going to type the name of the thing we're looking for, and in this case we are looking for a sprite. Now down here beneath we can name the sprite, and I'm going to call it Mr. Box. Now you'll see that I had a space in there and it's gotten rid of it. You can't have spaces in your naming conventions in Construct. So I'm going to insert that. Now you'll notice that the cursor has changed into a cross from an arrow. Now if I left click on the workspace, I'll bring up this. It's the animator editor, animation editor, and this in the center of our workspace is the area that we can work in with the sprite. Now I'm not an artist, and right now it's not terribly important that we have a nice shiny animation to work with. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to select blue on the color palette here. I'm going to select the fill tool, and then I'm going to fill the sprite. Now when I close it, I'll have this big old box in the center of my screen. That's not really what I want, so I'm going to double click it to reopen the animator, and I am going to change the size of it. And I'm going to change it to 64 by 64. This is now our player. Having done that, I am going to repeat that process, and I'm going to create some ground. Now this time I forgot to name it. Sometimes this happens, you know, we will jump ahead a step, so we need to be able to rename it. So on the right hand side I'm going to right click sprite, I am going to go to rename, and I'm going to call it ground. So at this point I think it would be a really good idea to test to see what happens if we run the game. Now before I do it, I'd like you to take a moment to pause the video and consider what is going to happen. Okay, now that you've done that, I am going to run the game to see what happens, and to do that I am going to hit preview, which is this play arrow here. You should get a oh Chrome, why, there we go. You should get a browser pop up, and what will happen is that you'll have two boxes of colour and they won't move at all. Okay, so one of the things we should talk about now is why we could see them. And if you see here, we have a dotted line that comes down and along. This is our viewport area. Everything in the top left hand corner of our workspace can be seen. That's what's shown on the computer. Everything outside of it can't be. So if we take both of these and move them outside and run it again, we don't see anything. So why didn't they move? Well, the answer to that is we haven't told them to yet. Computers can never do anything unless you give them instructions to do something. So let's start by giving Mr. Box some behavior. We're going to right click and we're going to go to add behavior. We'll scroll down and we will select platform. Platform is the behavior that gives movement control to an object in the form of the character movement from a platform game. Now, when we run it, what do you think is going to happen? Okay, so we see Mr. Box falls and he doesn't stop when he hits the ground. So why would that be, do you think? Okay, so the answer is that we haven't yet given it a behavior that will allow it to be interacted with. So we're going to go to add behavior and we'll add solid. Now when we run it, we'll fall, stops on there, and we can move around and jump by using the left and right arrow plus the up arrow. And that is the very basics of making a platform game in Construct. In the next video, we're going to start looking at how we can start putting together a level and producing something a little more interesting.